Around the bays next week, so I really need to do some mechanical work on this bike if I want to have something to ride. First up, the cranks. They're a pretty important part of the bike, but since a pedal bearing seized up in an ill-fated attempt to very carefully ride to the nearest bike shop with a pedal that didn't turn, resulted in the pedal coming loose from the crank minus a few of the outer threads, that side's always been a touch loose. Now I can't really take that risk on Around the Bay. Losing a pedal would pretty much be a ride ender. Of course, you've got to figure out what you have here. Mikada? Mikandra? Okay, apparently it says Miranda. I think they're 170mm Q factor of 8. I really ought to buy a work stand, but a few tie-down straps can apparently be a substitute. Unfortunately, attempts to remove the old ones with the eBay special crank puller just stripped the threads. It stuck fast, and applying a lot of force to poorly cut steel threads on the puller in an aluminium crank is a recipe for no fun. So, one solution presents itself, but that's only the start of the battle. If we can just remove the two corners that stick out, we can then remove the chain guard and potentially get in behind it. And now we are in behind it. So I'm going to put some duct tape down to protect the rest of it from accidental contact with the cutting wheel. I may have to end up taking this off piece by piece. And at this point we can loosen the lock ring for the sprocket, but not actually get it off over what's left of the crank. Looks like the remaining piece of crank is now small enough to remove, and that's one less thing in the way. At this point the chain and sprocket go, and I try to attack it directly. Now this just seems to be a good way of bending screwdrivers, but when all else fails, just add more screwdriver. It's starting to move. And it's off. Good, the new one fits. Now as a reminder, Around the Bay is next weekend, so if I screw this up I don't have a working bike. Now it's not just the chain that has to go, we need new sprockets as well. The chain's done over 10,000 kilometers and is worn well below minimum wear. The sprockets are going to be trashed as well. Probably shouldn't see a dust cloud pop out when the master link comes off. The first thing to go wrong with a worn chain is derailleur shifting, which this bike doesn't do, it instead uses an internal gear hub. The second thing is usually in the smallest gears the chain starts skipping over the teeth. Both the sprockets are actually pretty large, so neither of these are a problem. But in case you're wondering why the front sprocket isn't so big, there's actually a 2.5:1 reduction drive from the pedals to that sprocket inside the e-bike motor, which is responsible for a bit of the pedal loss. This is not to be done by the end user under any circumstance, according to the repair manual, because it is far too complicated to figure out how to line up two dots to get it back on. And then okay, did that come straight off? Thing from NA 1, 2, 3, 6, 7. Oh, hang on, 22. 22. Oh, that's offset 22. Oh, because I got that. Yeah, that's an offset 22. You may ask, why do I have so many of them? As part of a different project, I'm going to have a go changing the gear ratio and see how that goes off-road. But until then, keep that one. Oh yeah, it's very easy to get circlips off without a pair of circlip pliers. Not so easy to get them on. There we go. Alright, so now line the red dots up. Then line the yellow dots up and put that on. Cool. So then that should... Yep, that should. In 22. 22. Cool.
Yep, that looks identical. Let's not drop the expensive custom Bosch tool. These are not cheap. So now the chain. Length 112 links.
I am replacing the narrow chain with a wide one because they are harder wearing.
This being a single speed chain, you might wonder, why do I have a single speed chain when this bike quite clearly has gears? Well, the thing is, this doesn't have traditional derailleur gears, so effectively, as far as the chain's concerned, this is a fixie. Well, yeah, that is. Now, measure this out by number of links, because if the chain is especially worn, it might be a link or two off at the end. 1, 2, 3, 41, 42, 51, 52. So then when we're ready to put that back on the bike, so this one has a little elongated hole in it, so we can put the chain back together like that and pull, and those two will connect together. Pull that back to here, and then that should, unless that's meant to go, no wonder it doesn't want to go in, we were trying to put it in backwards. And then that needs to line up with that, yeah, which pretty much does. So. Yes, the sink is clean. Yeah, nice thing about installing this now is that it doesn't have to be installed under tension, which certainly makes this a lot easier. Yeah, because this is definitely a wide chain. So this one, because that bolt is captive, will actually self-extract. And no need for that.
So now for the other side, which is pretty stuck as well. This thread suffered the same fate from the cheap crank puller being used on it previously, so not even the good one can engage properly now. Screw this, I'm going to the pub. Alright, so I get back and it's deja vu all over again. This time, no protruding axle with a sprocket. Can we get the motor cover off over this? No, or rather, not yet. Okay, add some duct tape to avoid filling all the electrical connections up with metal shavings. Remove enough of it and then it comes off. So there's a Bosch service bulletin to replace the rubber axle seal with a greased felt one. Hey, now there's circlip pliers. It appears though that a lot of people just don't like the new axle seal though. They say it gathers up a bunch of water and just rusts the axle. So I'm going to replace the circlip and not fit the new seal.
Is one of these has a left-hand thread so that it doesn't unscrew when you're riding. So if the right pedal won't go on the right crank, you may have it on the left-hand side of the bike. So the other thing with these Gazelle pedals is they have a lower Q factor than the ones we have before. The pedal is closer to the crank, which is more comfortable when you're riding.
Actually, we should probably grease these up so they don't end up seized on. Now that would possibly seem like something you shouldn't do, but it's the bolt at the end that stops it from coming loose, not actually friction on the spline.
I like the Gazelle pedals because they've got an Allen key in the middle, which is much nicer than using a spanner like that.
A quick test and the brakes work fine, so nothing to do in that regard.
I mean, it didn't explode. New chain's a bit noisy, but that might just be because it's new. Now lastly, it seems that I built this without expecting that I would later buy a GoPro 11. And while this is perfect for the GoPro 8, the GoPro 11 has a different design for the pass-through door, and this right-angle cable does not go deep enough to actually plug in, so we're going to need to make another one of those.
So it's the day before around the bay. I'm packing Allen keys, a spanner for the axle, chain quick links pliers, a tyre pump, a multi-tool, a Torx key, cable ties, a chain tool, some carbon dioxide cartridges, tyre patches and some tyre levers. So why the carbon dioxide cartridges? Well, with a tiny pump it'll take a lot of pumping to get the tyre filled up.
I'll call it 30.
Instead, you can just carry a little cylinder of compressed gas, attach it to the pump and rapidly inflate the tyre.
45-ish PSI.
Which is enough to ride on with one, maybe use half a second one to bring it up to something a little bit firmer. But the reason why these don't get used for normal use, besides the cost, these are like $2 a piece, is that carbon dioxide has a small problem. The rubber of the inner tubes and tyre is permeable to it, and it leaks out. In fact, it leaks out faster than permeability itself would calculate. Instead, it's believed to actually be dissolving into the rubber and effervescing out of the outside. So if you use these to reinflate your tyres, they'll be fine to finish the day on, but they will be flat in a few days' time. So if it's such a bad choice for a gas, why is it used then? Well, there's something else that outweighs the disadvantage. It turns out to cram 16 whole grams, or 8 litres at atmospheric pressure, of carbon dioxide into one of these tiny cylinders. They sit at a pressure of about 860 psi. Now that sounds like a lot, but using the ideal gas law, in theory that volume of gas compressed to this size would be 6500 psi, or about double the pressure of a typical scuba dive tank. So what gives? Well, at room temperature and that sort of pressure, carbon dioxide actually liquefies, greatly reducing the pressure in the cylinder, and instead we can have lightweight metal canisters rather than a heavily armoured tank. So are there alternatives? Well, while some alternatives obviously don't even warrant consideration, like helium, which has the same permeation problem but worse, well, the obvious contenders for suitable alternative substances would probably be some sort of hydrocarbon. Butane, isobutane or propane, they're all gaseous at room temperature but liquefy nicely under pressure. But need I explain the potential hazards of filling your tyres with a hydrocarbon gas, especially with some residual air in there to form a nice explosive mix with? And under high pressure too? Now, you could reduce this flammability risk by adding some chlorines and fluorines onto the molecule, which gives us the chlorofluorocarbons. Well, yeah, we don't use those anymore, the ozone layer's only just recovering now. We could stick with just fluorine and have something like R134A or HFC 152A. These are commonly used in air duster cans because the lower vapor pressure gives you more even pressure out of the can than with carbon dioxide. But due to the high molar mass, the amount of volume you'd actually get out of a small cartridge is significantly lower than carbon dioxide alone. Well, there's also nitrous oxide, which is even available in similar small metal cartridges, also under pressure and liquefied. Good for whipped cream, of course, but you'll note the Rocket Motor 2, built by Scaled Composites for Spaceship 2, burns rubber as fuel using nitrous oxide for an oxidizer. Now, I don't believe this is likely to translate into increased cycling speed, just another potential explosion. So while nitrogen or just plain compressed air wouldn't leak out of your tyres, well, as fast anyway, wouldn't harm the ozone layer and wouldn't result in a potential explosion, it would require a much bigger and heavier cartridge to hold it. Hence, carbon dioxide remains as the least worst option. In the rear bag, 2 batteries. The reason why I hired that cargo bike was alluded to in the last video. The reason why is it takes the same batteries as this e-bike, allowing me to have 4, not 2. I believe I'll need 4 to last the 210 kilometers of around the bay, although last week's ride did come up short, so I'm really hoping I'm right about this bike being more power efficient. In the frame bag, a pair of spare inner tubes, because flats while riding on the highway shoulder are apparently common from road debris. I was initially going to put the Schwalbe 1 tyres on this bike, but I think I'll stick with the Schwalbe Marathon Pluses as they are a lot more resistant to damage. Supposedly Around the Bay does provide mechanical support, but I'm not sure to what extent I can rely on it, especially as at 25k an hour I may be pressed from time given that I'm likely to be at the slower end of riders fast enough to qualify. So I'm trying to be mechanically self-sufficient here. Energy gels at Woolies obtained at short notice. Are they any good? How many do I need? I've never had them before. And a bunch of ginger in 2 exciting forms. And the battery, which I won't put on the bike quite yet. Easier to unload it out of the car without it fitted.
Alright, the handlebars all the way down for speed. Just got to re-angle everything else now. Although I haven't ridden it like that in a long time.
So with that all on it, the bike now weighs 45 kilograms. Now I didn't weigh the Tern GSD after I loaded it up, but I feel like we're getting pretty close to that on this. Which is a bit worrying given I only made it 170 kilometers before running out of battery. Will this be different? Will the bags hold out? Will my legs hold out? Will the bike hold out? Am I going to be able to successfully cross the line? And in what condition? Join us next time to find out. Until then, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and see you next time.